Hey there, everyone. It is Friday afternoon. It is Because Cannabis, 4:20 p.m. on the time watch. Is it a time watch? Is it a clock piece? What do you call the thing you read the time on? Your phone? What do you say? Are you a person, Dustin, who when you say, I want to check the time, it's automatically my phone? Or do you ever go like wristwatch? Or what do you look at time on?
Yeah, that's definitely a phone. We've had this conversation a couple of times where I'm not a wristwatch guy. I wish I could be, but I'm not. And I'm at the computer all the time. So I guess I'm always looking in the corner.
No, always look at somewhere else. You know what I don't think we've talked about as much? You always have a hat on, right? You always have a hat on when we're on here. So I'm wondering if you always have permanent, maybe good hair days, bad hair days, if that doesn't matter. I feel like I'm having a bad hair day, right? I got a whole like unicorn tuft thing happening. If you're watching on YouTube right now, because you subscribe to the channel and so you know what's happening Fridays at 4:20, or if you're listening to audio, whether it's Google Play or iTunes or Spotify, if you're listening, you'd have to watch the video on the YouTube channel Because Cannabis from Wayward Media, Wayward.media, to see this bit of a toughness. And so you always have a hat on. Like, do you ever think about bad hair days, or because you can so easily and quickly toss on the beanie and just roll with it, or a trucker hat? You do beanies or trucker hats. Do you even think about it much? You got a lot of hair, but I feel like you don't ever have to worry about having a bad hair day.
Yeah, never. I don't think I've had a bad hair day since 95.
Wow. Just all the time hats?
Yeah, all the time hats.
I think I'm becoming a hat guy. I'm becoming more self-conscious. I've seen myself in photos lately. You've taken them. Thank you. Cleveland School of Cannabis. Shout out. I think I've seen the back of my head in high resolution more often from above, and it makes me self-conscious. So I think I'm going to become a hat person, but I've already started to slowly kind of acclimate myself to you with the beard we're growing this winter. If I have a beard and I rock the beanie, I'm just slowly becoming kind of like a red-tinged version of Dustin Kava, and I feel like the whole point was like the polos and the clean shaven against vagrancy chic. So now I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do? Do I embrace the bald? Should I shave my head? Here's what I need to know right now. Dustin Kava, tell me, should I shave my head and remove all these follicles from my skin?
No.
That's the correct answer in that question.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure if you would get a job after that point.
Wow. You're going so far that my shaven head look makes me look unhireable. That is a bold statement from someone with like a 2-foot long beard, like a homeless Gandalf vibe going on. That's a really there. I don't know. Kari Jager hopping on here from Cleveland Innovative Infusions. I always love the awkwardness of coming on. No one knows. It's all good. Well, I need to know, most importantly, Kari, as we're sitting here talking about hair, is I have this threshold of when it comes, I'm going to get gross here for a second, but I have this threshold of when it comes to, say, hair in my food. I'm fairly tolerable of it. I know some people, if they find a hair in their food, literally the entire plate of spaghetti is dead to me, even if it's just a sliver over in this kind of lake of salsa, or marinara sauce, also one lake of marinara sauce. They'll still say nothing. But I realized not too long ago, I was eating an infused edible, and I believe I found a hairish type thing in there. And someone who makes your gummies at Cleveland Innovative Infusions do not have hair in them. I'm not implying that. But what I need to know from both you, Kari, and Dustin, Kari first, is do you have a line, like if it's infused and it's got cannabis and that's an extra value, are you more tolerant of some indiscretions, of a bad taste of a hair, or are you still a perfectionist because you create and make these things, Kari? Like, where's your line when it comes to like improprieties in your delicacies?
Like, okay, so if you're eating at my house, you have to be okay with a certain percentage. Like the FDA is like okay with a certain percentage of like rat parts. Like that's right. So, I mean, what's one hair, really?
Yes, I agree. And I think you're right. The whole thing adds a layer, right? At a restaurant, though, are you sending the whole thing back? Are you excusing it? No. Does it have to be a hairball? Where's your line?
I'm not. I'll never send food back. Just because, like, I don't know. I'm so non-confrontational in that aspect, at least. But I think like. My like if I got a hair like in my gummies, I would probably send an email. And I don't know if that makes me a Karen, but the only reason is because if somebody found a gummy in a hair in a gummy that I made, I would want to know, because then it could be like, oh, so-and-so needs to wear like a beard net. Like, so I just like, I don't know. Like, it's, for me as a person, I am trash. Like, I don't care. But for other people that I make food for, like, I hope it doesn't have it.
We hope it's not in there. She already mentioned that. Where you at, Dustin, when it comes to imperfections in your food? You freak out. Like, I know a guy right now, literally, if he found what could have been a hair, but maybe it's just really thin angel hair pasta, he would might upchuck, and it offends him so much. He's like, oh, it's a stain, so much so that I stopped dining with him because it was a bit like, like I'm similar to Kari Jager from Cleveland Innovative Infusions, CleInnovativeInfusions.com. I'm similar to that. Like, I'm not non-confrontational. Where you go with this, Dustin? Are you offensive? Do you get mad?
No, to tell you the truth, I can never tell who's the one who dropped it. There's so much hair coming off my face that I'm like, and there's so many different colors in this beard that I'm not like, that's your cat. I'm more like, which part of my face did this actually fall from? So no, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm going to get through it. It's going to be okay.
As I said, we are not implying anything that Cleveland Innovative Infusions has any sort of improprieties. In fact, I think that's the perfect time or reason to bring in someone like Kari Jager from Cleveland Innovative Infusions is to talk about that process. Kari, welcome to Because Cannabis. We don't know where we're going to go when we start. And so, gross food is a great place to start because you know why? Segue here, people. Watch it happen. We're going to talk about amazing food and yummy products that Cleveland Innovative Infusions is putting out. Welcome, Kari, to the show. How you doing today?
Hey, doing good. So yeah, what I do not like hold a license, just to be kind of clear about that. I just I can work with different license holders that are looking to either improve the quality of or create a new line of edibles, because for whatever reason, I think it's just because like the flower and like the dabs are just so exciting for so many people that like edibles kind of become this like afterthought. But like, if you ever have been a person like in the legacy side of things, like back in the day, like hypothetically, and like say your electricity was turned off, you can make that money a lot easier selling a pan of brownies to get your electricity back on than you could. And I think that applies like at a larger scale, like really like the profit margins in infused products are so much higher than just flour. Plus, you can take remediated product, like the flour that like will not pass the crazy high standards for mold and bacteria, things like that. And you can just distill it and then make that into edibles. So it's just like a catch-all that like, for me, like, I think that would be the first place that I would start to look at, and then like develop out like my facility around that, just because that's going to be like making a lot of money for you. I mean, with that whole afterthought mentality, like other than the companies that are really partnering with strong white labels like Lana or like Kiva, things like that are just automatically going to be successful because of the name and the brand, and they have people that are like dedicated to traveling to facility to like train the staff, things like that. Which comes with paying 20% in royalties. Like you just kind of like have to trust that you have the staff with the knowledge and skill set to produce an up to code edible in an industry that does not require you to be FDA up to code. Even though these facilities like are very strict and are inspected and things like that, like there's still signage in all the facilities, like the dispensaries that says this is not food. So just still being able to like use the best practice standards that would fulfill the requirements of a USDA facility, because I think we should just plan for success. I think we should just plan that federal is going to happen at some point. It might not happen next year, but it's going to happen at some point. So we should be operating like it is, like, I don't know, absolutely, up to the highest standard. So like, that's just like most of the people that got into cannabis, like that started these companies were into like realtor, like what's that when you like trade property and stuff? Like just rich people stuff. Like,
just rich people stuff. No, Dustin talks about that all the time.
Like, that's
no.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
Like, I don't know how to do rich people stuff. So if anybody's out there that wants to send me a small loan of $1 million and get me started on that, that would be cool.
Let's do it.
Well, you know, it when you're speaking of it in that way, it sounds like, you know, the edibles are kind of like an insurance policy to what the corporation is actually doing already. It's kind of like we can, if something does go wrong in any part of our process, we can kind of convert to this. But at the same point, you're not just making product as an insurance policy. You're the formulations that you are creating, the recipes that you are creating define the brands, and even down to the flavors and just yes. And so I kind of see you as one of the last lines of defense in like the perception of what people think of the actual cannabis that's within it. And so you have a really important job. And I think people just think, oh, I can just infuse anything and it's going to sell. And it's like, no, you go through so much to make sure that it's on brand that it's not even seen half the time. And I think that's what's really valuable about some of the work that Cleveland, Infusions does.
Thank you. Like, I mean, this is pretty new, the Cleveland Innovative Infusion. This is something that I started about a month ago when I separated from the last company I was working for. And it's just something that has kind of been on my heart in terms of people coming up to me, asking me to do consulting work on different little projects that I had a lot of interest in, but, you know, I couldn't because it would have been a conflict of interest in my prior position. So this kind of gives me the ability to really hyper focus in on the part that I love most, which is the development and the product, innovation, that side of it. And making those suggestions, like kind of like what you're saying, like in terms of, yeah, like let's not just make another gummy on the shelf. Like there's so many different factors that can make a gummy successful. Yes, anybody can spray a bag of Sour Patch Kids and put it out and absolutely charge the same amount as Wana does, but that doesn't necessarily lead to long-term success, because I've literally seen that happen. But I think that in terms of choosing ingredients that are aligning with the company's core values, which is something that I don't know that always gets thought out. So maybe using tapioca syrup like Wana does, I think is a really cool move that they made. But just like choosing more just consumer focused, like non-GMO ingredients, not like because you have so much of a profit margin there that like the company Skittles has to use like fake food coloring and fake flavors because Skittles doesn't have weed in there to make it cost more money. So that's kind of how I look at it in terms of like being a chef and trying to choose like really like real and grown up ingredients, I guess.
No, it's exciting though, because that's exactly what's happening, you know, as the cannabis industry grows up, is it is realizing that it's not just, hey, as you mentioned, I can just take any edible or take anything and sell it. It's having, you know, consultants, which is essentially what I think Cleveland Innovative, it's easy for me to say, Cleveland Innovative Infusions. It's CLEINFUISONS.com, CleInfusions.com, Cleveland Innovative Infusions. I said that a lot prior to going on the air because I just knew it's got a little bit of a trick to it. Cleveland Innovative Infusions, CleInfusions.com. Kari Jager, kind of the owner, the startup of it. But that's we'll talk more about where you're doing there, Kari. Let's go back though. Let's go back in time. Do you remember, Kari, this day, the first kind of edible high that you got? Like, do you remember when you fell in love with like this process? Let's go back to your stoner journey, Kari.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, the stoner journey goes back probably longer than I want to admit on camera, but
take it to wherever you are comfortable with starting. This is like a choose your own adventure. You can start this however you want. No one really knows the truth. Only like five people.
Honestly, I think in a lot of ways, like just the relief I got from cannabis helped save my life when I was like, not to get all like deep, but like in terms of like, I grew up in a way that I won't get too far into it, but it was rough. And I think a lot of us found cannabis in that way, like, because it was just the source of relief that is not that dangerous. So like that's kind of what helped me. And then kind of going through like up until college, I went into culinary school. I knew then back in 2012 that I wanted to be making infused foods, but I think Colorado hadn't even passed rec yet. There really was no viable career path towards that. And anybody that I wanted to talk to at the time, like I had this idea that I really wanted to do a infused ramen food truck, because food trucks were like the thing in 2012. Yes. And everyone's just like,
ramen food truck.
Wouldn't that be dank though?
I am all about the comfort food and like the warm like, infusions.
Yeah, I love the idea of like soupy, warm, and you said warm, liquidy, brothy infusions, because you're getting
that. I was sick when I came up with that idea, honestly. But I mean, everybody kind of looked at me like I had 3 heads and would just kind of say, like, they're there, like, just focus on catering. And I love cooking, so I mean, I did that. I did just focus on not necessarily catering, but like I did fine dining in Fulton Market District, like that kind of thing. But I remember trying my first edible, 2014. I was still in culinary school. My friend just got back from Colorado, like just when they legalized it. And she brought me like an Incredibles bar, the Affogato bar. And I just was like obsessed with the fact that it was in a real package. Like, because I just like the only edibles I'd ever gotten was like in a plastic bag. So like
crunchy tinfoil, like from his shoe.
Tinfoil.
Right, like people in a factory like made that. Like, and then that I worked in those factories for a while. But yeah, so that was definitely just kind of. I wish that I had known more about edibles sooner, but like I feel like the like education on how to make edibles is still really new. Like now most people know about decarboxylation and things like that, but I just didn't know all that stuff then. So but yeah. Yeah, so that was sorry.
Well, no, I mean, so you see some of the country's laws changing. You're getting this idea of like, wow, I might actually be able to do something within the industry. What was in the first job you get in is working within grassroots?
Oh, so I actually, the first cannabis job that I worked in was working for Cresco. Oh, okay. I worked in their facility in Joliet as an edibles agent for $12 an hour. I was just looking at the offer letter last night and just kind of reminiscing. And
how exciting was that, though? Real quick, how exciting was that to get a job offer from a cannabis company? Like, do you remember kind of that? It's like opening the letter you're applying for college. It's like, please pick me, and you open it, and I'm like, oh my god, I get to work in legal weed. Like, oh my, like there's a right. It's like, whoa, a little bit.
I didn't sleep for like 2 days the first day, and like I just remember being like a couple weeks there of like already have been working there and just being like, I can't believe this is real. Like I actually got my mom a job there working as a trimmer about a few months after I started. So me and her would like share a locker.
Bringing families together,
honestly.
That's awesome.
But, yeah, it was so cool. Like yeah, that and it was a really good introduction into corporate cannabis because obviously Cresco is like huge, the biggest, and
efficiency focused.
I like probably would have had like a sticker of Mindy Segal like on my computer. I got to meet her in real life and I got to see how she treats people in real life. And I'm not going to say anything of whether it's good or bad because I think that it just was very illuminating for me. Yeah. And it showed me the things that I wanted to do and the things I wanted to not do. And
we all have those moments, though. Everyone has that moments with someone, and it doesn't. It's not a bad or good thing. You just all the bosses in your life. Like I think all of us are a culmination of professional and work and life experiences, and so you pick up those things, right? And some things, people who you love have terrible traits, and sometimes people who you don't like, you're like, man, I don't like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, but there's like letter L. I'm like, God, you do L well, bro. Well, like, come on, like, it happens.
You could be really creative and just be like intolerable. Like,
yes.
and I think
Yes,
I'm
Dustin
not, I might
Kava.
be describing myself. But yeah, I mean, but that's, I mean, I think to be able to be still in that room and be an intolerable person, you have to be pretty great
Yeah,
at what you do.
True that.
So, and I think I see her edibles winning more cannabis cups across states than like any other brand. So that was a great start for me, I think, in terms of like just getting broken in.
Sure. And that from Cresco to Grassroots and kind of a few other places. So were you switching roles, trying to find the right company, or what was and it doesn't really matter why you left, but just what was the journey of going through these different cannabis companies? What were you looking for? And what did you clearly, I guess, maybe not find that led you to say, hey, I want to do this on a grander scale where I want to be the person who helps these companies versus the person who's in there creating for said company? Like, what was that journey like for you working through a few different companies like Cresco and Grassroots and beyond?
I think each company that I worked at, I mean, because I've been at 3, so it's a matter of going from not knowing that you can do anything at all to just seeing that you can do a little by a little, and then just realizing, oh, you know what? I do know enough to be like an assistant manager.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to apply for that. Or I know enough now to be a kitchen manager. And that's what ended up making me move to Litchfield, Illinois to work for Grassroots as a kitchen manager. And then once I got in there, working and creating kind of the white label brand Wana, which they were such an amazing company to work with. I learned so much from them. I also was able to get a start on like product development for the first time, working with the Hale line of edibles that I developed for them. That was like a paleo hemp seed bar, protein bar, cereal, seed mix, kind of a niche thing. But just kind of dipping my toe in that and seeing what it was like to do weight analysis and process analysis and really come up with an edible that is precisely dosed no matter what format it is in, because you have like loose bulk, you have like individual pieces, things like that. Knowing how to do that really unlocked the potential to kind of create the botanist line of edibles that I created for them while I was working there. So
there's I don't know, everybody looks at infusions and making edibles as this simple thing. And even the things that you just talked about kind of give that glimpse that it's not so cut and dry when you're making them. And there's all these tiny little puzzle pieces. What point do you like being in the kitchen, actually getting your hands dirty, making this, or do you prefer to kind of be in the background, just kind of conceptualizing what you think is the right way to go, or is it you really have what is your process for things like that?
This is my battle scar from cooking on the line, one of many. So I do prefer to be on the line as much as I can be. One, because I think that is the best way to kind of like, once the process is already developed, to ensure that that's really cemented in the staff that's going to be making it well enough for me to be able to step away. And then the other part of it is like, you can only find out so much through doing. So for example, I was working with a pectin that I hadn't worked with before for an out-of-state edible in New York in their medical program. They only allow like very specific ingredients that you could use if you were a pharmaceutical company, basically. And so I had to reformulate from scratch, like, and there's a lot of science involved with that, like with pectin gummies, especially, like each pectin has a different chemical makeup that it reacts differently to different pHs. So I literally, for fun, bought myself a $200 pH meter that I just use to like mess around with at home. But like, just like a lot of companies, if I come into their kitchen, they might have like a $12 pH meter that you could use for testing your soil or your nutrients. So that kind of thing, I think, is the just knowing which things you need to spend a little bit more money on to be successful and what's going to actually give you return. on it.
Well, and you're not just helping large companies anymore. You are helping a lot smaller scale operations think about, micro kitchens that you don't necessarily even own any portion of it. You almost are. And I find that actually the coolest part about what you're doing. I think you're bringing in a lot of people into the fold that may not have thought they had the opportunity or could do something like this, especially like BC. We've done a lot of students from the Cleveland School of Cannabis where a lot of their projects is actually doing exactly what you've been doing for the last 15 years. And to see that this is another avenue, to know that you would be able to kind of help walk them through some of this stuff is kind of neat. Everybody always thinks that they have to be a lot bigger than they are to start. And
That's a great way to put it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know one of the smallest license in for a CBD product. One of my good friends in Chicago has been featured in the Reader multiple times. That there's something very appealing about this small craft producers because they are. It's the same reason that you would go to like Ever in Chicago or go to like the Marble Room. I don't know what's in the Cleveland. We're going to spend a lot more money because it's a very special product. But I'm working with some smaller like hemp producers as well to kind of develop different, just to elevate that kind of part of their line. I think when you look at like the gas, not to say the gas station gummies, but like
we could say gas station. I think you're right though in that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being able to buy whatever I want at the gas station. If I can get my liquor at the gas station, if I can get a Snickers, I'm trying to think of what would rhyme with that for weed. But like I can get everything else at the gas station. Why not weed? And why was everybody so mad about that? I don't get it.
It's not that. I think it's part of it's understanding the value of what you're getting. When I go to McDonald's and I buy a hamburger, I know what I'm getting for although the price is going up. Looking at you, Mr. McDonald.
Like 1,000 cows smashed into one.
Yeah, but you know what you're getting. Then you go to like a Five Guys and you know what they're getting. I can get a hamburger from a high-end steak restaurant that's like $35. It's still a hamburger. It's still bread with like meat and cheese and bacon. It's still the same thing, but I have an expectation when I spend $35 than I do when I spend $2. And so I think it's that same thing. As you mentioned, there is steak, right? There's steak at Applebee's and there's steak at Fleming's or, some other really fancy restaurant. And so there is always going to be a market, right? Walmart's the most successful retailer on the planet for a reason. It's a lot of stuff sold super, super cheap, but there is always going to be a market. And I think as any market grows up, it was beer for the longest time. And then it was Budweiser and other types of brands. And now it's 1,000 brands at your store, right? So you're trying to think about this on a scale that it doesn't have to be simplistic. It doesn't mean it can't be, like it can be scaled down, but I appreciate thinking of the pH balance of this. Does everyone? No. I mean, does your customers? Probably not. The customer never really cares about all the hard work you put into it. I'm drinking some coffee now. I don't think anything about the poor like immigrants that probably farmed it in the elk. I don't know elk farming. Where are they in Colombia?
Elk.
Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to think of a donkey. That's where I was trying. Mule. That's where I was going.
Getting some carrots.
Yeah. So there is there's an expectation of price. And I think it's okay to say, look, I want to raise the game. I want to raise the bar. But I think and I appreciate that you are recognizing that there's always a market for both, right? There's going to be that, of course.
At the end of the day, for me, I want to, I'm in this industry because I want to help people get relief, period, point blank. If the only access that they have is the Circle K that they can walk to, and they can't afford to be a patient, then I believe that they deserve access to hemp-derived Delta-9 THC that might help them if, say, it's like a veteran on like a fixed income. I think that there's, that's why I've wanted to work with some of those smaller companies for sure, because of the offerings that I am seeing, like with Delta-8, it's just like, I just want to I want to see that be more accepted and more validated, I guess.
Yeah, we talk... Even owning the store, you could see the difference just in the cost of effectiveness of switching them from CBD to that. And so, yes, having an option that has a little bit more thought put in, is maybe just a tiny bit more expensive, but still over the course of the month, a lot more cost effective. I think that I saw the most amazing things with families that did use and did try things like that. And, you know, I don't know. I think it makes a big difference when they're worried about every single thing else in their life to not have to worry about the medicine's consistency or the price point, and that they can just have it for their kid when the kid needs it. It's a whole nother game. And I think that's a very honorable. I think if you keep that moral in focus, no matter what you do, the company will succeed. It's the most important value because everything else comes after that.
I do believe that. Like, I believe that even just being profitable is a positive consequence of putting those kind of things first, putting actual care first. I do feel like that comes through in some of the products that are like just even doing really well in our market, like in Ohio, like which brands are standing out and which aren't, you know? So I think, yeah, I mean, obviously I have a pretty limited laser focus on edibles here, but I mean,
well, do you see a difference between, say, Michigan and Ohio with the way they think about edibles? You know, like, are you seeing that as you enter into a new market, there's a whole different shift in paradigm, like shift in thinking between the markets?
Absolutely. Like in a state with like Michigan, for example, where the cost of everything has to become much more competitive. A lot of times I'll be looking at a product design where I have an end goal of, say, I need to make 100 milligram gummy that I can sell for $4 a pack to the dispensary. Because there's such, I mean,
it's a race to the bottom right now. And so as you're trying to create a quality product on your way and race to the bottom, it's a whole different dynamic of what you're innovating for and how.
It's kind of like building it upside down. Because in a lot of ways, I still can find a way to do that, say $4, but maybe that means you're buying an ingredient in bulk, or like working with, instead of like buying buckets of corn syrup, you're buying a huge
pallet of buckets.
The vats. I think vats and vats. Like those big vats that the Joker falls in an Ace Chemical Factory.
Dude, real talk though, there is a corn syrup shortage. So if anybody out there is listening to this, buy a vat of corn syrup and just tell me thank you later.
There is also a coffee shortage, by the way. Side note, my like little Folgers thing that's normally $9 is like $18 for the basic size coffee. I had to Google, why is it so expensive? There's these after effect, like, you know, we had all these shortages during the peak of coronavirus and COVID, like bicycles and weird things. And now we're getting these post effects, these delays of agricultural that's finally catching back up with us, including things like coffee and now corn syrup. So corn syrup, wow, I don't like, first of all, there's a whole another conversation about corn syrup. If you've seen the movie Fed Up People, it'll change your life on corn syrup. Yeah. It's a really, you're corn, just so you know that you got the juice. You are all corn, people. It's a beautiful fruit. Like, you are all corn. Yes.
With knobs.
Yeah, it's got knobs, and you are all, I just learned that we're like 90% corn. Like, that kid's right. Like, I didn't know that, but we are like 90% corn thanks to that.
In Ohio, in the Midwest. Yes.
Yes, of course. I'm always curious, Kari, then, so what's your preferred method? Do you like then to start bottom up? Do you like the challenge of being given a cost to meet, or do you prefer to someone to say, make it amazing and you just get to dash and splash and dish a little bit of pinch of here and there and make something amazing? Was it more challenging to start with a cost and meet it, or is it more fun to just make whatever comes to your head using all the weird, crazy ingredients?
To me, it's nice to kind of have a blend of the two, because there's a big part of it that I don't control, which is the packaging. So like just kind of factoring in how much of their cost is going to be packaging.
Good question.
Is a part of it. But I think it is most fun when they kind of have a concept and give me, you know, either, okay, I want, you know, a sugar-free gummy that has live resin. and that's all I have to go on. And then I can kind of do a lot with that. Or I've had other companies tell me, okay, I want these 4 flavors exactly, like, and then I basically will make like 5 different versions of each of those flavors at least, so that they can choose through.
So you have like 5. Someone says I want strawberry, watermelon, mango, which I don't know if that sounds good or not, but someone says I want this. You'll came up with like 5 versions of it that's just a little heavier on the strawberry and a little heavier on the mango, and like a little. Is that kind of what you're doing? And like, and saying so you get the right. That is all. That's so much corn syrup you already carry. That's what I also realized.
That and like my other favorite to do is like I'll have a blind taste test. So say we're making a change to a flavor.
How do I sign up for that job?
And I won't tell them which one it is, and they just have to taste both of them and tell me which one they like better. And sometimes it's like, okay, well, that's how it was before, so that's the one you like. Like, but yeah, that there's different. I like to be very interactive and really have anybody that's kind of like working with me to have just as much creative say and really have kind of fun with it too, like I get to.
Oh gosh, all I want now is like
a testing job.
Yes, testing job. I also want some infused mac and cheese right now. All I'm thinking about is everything else but sweets.
That I think I cannot wait. Like that's definitely the dream, is to be able to have a license to have a medicated food restaurant. I mean, I know there's consumption spaces and things like that.
Is there really a dedicated infused restaurant at this point? I've seen, as Dustin alluded to in my class, I've seen about 1,000 pitches for infused restaurants, but is there a truly dedicated infused restaurant right now? I haven't seen it actually come into fruition. I could be totally wrong, but I think it's just like a licensing issue. Yes. I mean, that's what I mean. It's an issue with how do you do it. And even so somehow like bars have figured it's out years ago. Somehow we can't figure out how to consume on site and send our patrons on their way, even though we have it thousands and millions of bars across the country, which is always weird, right? How do we figure out if they're going to consume on the property? Go further down the penal code of your system and state and find the rules for alcohol and just mimic it, copy, Control V, paste. But I don't think there is, and I think it's a lot of it's that, like, how do we serve this and how do we get around it? So I think as many people have tried, to my knowledge, there is not to this point. And if it is, we're talking it's 1 or 2, and it's probably borderline gray. Like it's not operating 100%. It's like those New York dispensaries or like pop-up shops. Yeah, right?
Or you're part of the co-op, so you can eat at the farmhouse where the infusion is happening.
Yeah, you're getting around it through loopholes. There is no one that's able to open their doors and do that. But it didn't what was that, Carl's Jr. that did the CBD burger a few years ago?
Yeah, but I also saw, them deep frying leaves in batter and then giving like little chips that are like crunchy and shit. So I've seen like little appetizers and stuff that may not have actually had a lot of medical value to it, but I still have seen. Yeah, but a plate of 6 of them was $17. So it was a very high profit little bing, bang, boom.
Like, just think about like when in Whole Foods, you'll be able to go in and just buy a little salad container of hemp leaves. I feel like that's kind of going to be before the end of the year. And I mean,
I think that has to be close. You can already buy multiple hemp-based products right now. And I would imagine, down the milk, which they haven't found a nut that they can't squeeze to make a juice out of. I'll take that as you will. There's going to be hemp milk in that section at some point. Like there's already all these other ones on there. It's going to be, don't judge me, Dustin. There's going to be that there. So, and there's already multiple sections of where it's being filtered in. There's already organic based food stores like a Whole Foods or that who are incorporating way more hemp and stuff. It's right next to the flaxseed in these sections. It's becoming like that. So I agree, whether it's the THC, the hemp stuff, right? And I still think hemp is a big thing. We were just all up in the hemp last night talking about, I think it's going to be a big thing moving forward. And then I think you're going to see people finding more infusions of hemp, not so much for the psychoactive effect, but hemp is apparently a very healthy seed to eat when digested. It's got a lot of healing properties, a lot of therapeutic properties, similar to its other neighboring, brother, sister plants, more the traditional cannabis plant. So I think you're going to see more infused hemp stuff on a very regular basis. Your protein bars, things like that. I think you can easily buy hemp protein bars right now at the grocery store. So it's going to come soon, and it's pretty exciting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's cool just even being at the checkout lane and seeing like CBD and things like that. Just it's wild to see how quickly things have changed and grown. When even like with the minor cannabinoid like CBN, when I was working at Cresco, so this was like 5-6 years ago, they were just like starting to do some research on CBN and seeing if like they could convert THC to CBN and seeing if it like had the qualities to make people sleepy. And now that is probably the leading, more so than like even sativa or indica dominant like edibles. Like the CBN edibles have just taken over. Like that's the most sellingest SKU, I think.
Do you think that the industry is finally getting to the point where they're picking specific strains because it's going to be used in a specific edible? Or do you think it's really just, this is what we have left, we just need to kind of process what's left over, or this didn't make it past our quality control checks? Do you think is it?
It was different. Like 5 years ago, there was like an entire grow like building like dedicated to growing the like harlequin that we needed for our 1-to-1 gummies. But then the law changed to allow minor cannabinoids that were hemp derived, and I think that really changed the way that people made those selections, because I still think THC percentage really rules what people pick in the dispensaries.
Which has been proven. I mean, I just think I read an article today about California only selling like 2% of all the products sold in California had under 22% or 20%. So they're certainly not choosing anything but numbers at this point.
And it's because, I mean, a lot of them, they don't have a prior experience, you know, with this as just an intoxicant in general. There's like the weekend warriors, as people that are just like not obsessed about weed like I am. But I mean, it's just, I think that as they kind of learn more, maybe they're going to change their selection based on terpenes, things like that. But it does kind of stink seeing some of those lower THC flowers like not around, because like for my boyfriend who never smokes, for me to get him to smoke with me, I like need to have something that's 16 or 17%.
Yes.
So I don't know. It's just, it's like that part I would say is probably not my expertise so much in terms of like the flowers and genetics and things like that.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you like seeing edibles, like for, let's say we move towards more legalization, more adult use, more mass consumption, more, let's say, mass acceptance. Do you like what CBD is kind of modeled itself after, where they market and brand these products as, I don't want to say emotions, but how they're going to make you feel, right? They're going to make you sleepy. They're going to make you energetic. Or do you like the branding that THC tends to use, which is here's the strain, here is the genetics? Would you prefer, and I know we were just, and maybe we can pull this up here in a second. We were just looking on your Instagram and you had something you called a Moonlight Serenade nightcap gummies, right? Designed to kind of put you asleep with some alcohol and some things like that. Do you like the idea of marketing them is like sleepy time, or do you like that cannabis or THC still goes all in on, you know, this is from this land and this is where your flower was grown? Which do you prefer, or which do you think maybe as the industry grows up? Here's kind of your nighttime gummies from your Instagram here. Which do you think as the industry grows up is going to be the way that it kind of ends? Is THC going to win with specific, or do you think CBD is the model with a feeling and emotion?
I definitely would say it's going to be somewhere in the middle. And I think that the next real trend, and I see this in more than just cannabis, is just going after a functional branding, kind of like with the CBD, where, I mean, it's the same thing that people are choosing for the nootropics, adaptogens, things like that are very big now. And I think that the more that we can combine those kinds of things, like, for example, like in the sleep gummy, I had a honey added into those as well, because that's supposed to promote relaxation. But I do choose like really carefully my verbiage. So I'll say this will promote sleep. Yes. I won't say that, because I mean, everybody is going to have their own different reaction to it. I think that the powers that be, the government, or at least specifically in Ohio, we are really restricted in what we're able to advertise. So when you see a product being advertised on social media here in Ohio, a lot of times all you can really do is kind of list ingredients. So then it's kind of just on the consumer to educate themselves.
Yes.
I mean, I wish
God, this video is making me so hungry.
I know we're playing. If you're listening to audio right now, we got from Kari's Instagram here. She's making some vegan peach nectarine gummies. It's one of our obviously legal producers here on a mass scale. So I think it's interesting. Can you just talk us through this process? I know it's repeating a bit. So we have a couple things, major things happening. It looks like we're boiling up kind of the gelatin material, and then we're kind of putting it in. But I love the like this guy right here is like pushing it down. Like, talk us through this for a minute, kind of each of these little steps that's happening. I know there's shortened versions, but what's going on here? What are we watching?
Well, I can give you basically the dialed down version of what's standard industry practice here. So this was in my most recent job where we were making a pectin gummy. And what you kind of see there, that I've drawn eyeballs on her for this, because I think we had somebody coming through filming that day and I wanted to make her pretty, but that is the truffle. So that is most commonly used depositor that you will see in almost any cannabis kitchen. They're about 10 grand. And the next step up from that is like 30 to 60 to 100 grand.
Wow.
So it's a great starting point, because with that machine, with like 3 people, you can make about 20,000 gummies in one day when you're like going full blast.
What is that machine actually doing? Just, is it keeping it warm and allowing it to squirt where it's got to go, essentially, for 10 grand?
That's what you can pay me. You can pay me 10 grand to do that. This show is so inappropriate today. We're earning 18.
It's cool because you can set it to any temperature. So whether you have chocolate in there and you only want it to be like 90 degrees, or say if you have like, in theory, hard candy, which I don't recommend putting hard candy through that thing, 300 degrees. You can keep it all the way up to like, I think it goes above 300, but it keeps that hopper warm, so that your stuff inside stays fluid, so that it can get pressed out every time you pull the lever. And it's just a really simple, it's just got really simple pistons that when they squeeze together, it squishes out the goo, and you basically turn the dial to make it however small or big your piece is. So this is like a custom made mold that we got. And so like for certain companies, I recommend custom made molds because these are going to be like stronger and more durable. Like these molds, apparently you can drive a car over the back of it.
Is that like a silicone, like a giant silicone mold? Is that what that is?
Yeah, these are silicone molds. And silicone molds were great for gummies because they're so bendable, and you can easily pop everything right out. And what I like about pectin gummies is they'll set up like in 35, 40 minutes. So like with gelatin gummies, like you would be setting that entire rack of like deposited gummies like to sit overnight, and then you would be able to unmold them the next day. And then on these, like the same day, like we're basically, there's a bunch of different kinds of surface treatments is what it's called. It sounds so weird, but like, you know how some gummies are like sugary and some are like oily.
Oh,
There's
yes.
things that you can use. And so for this design, they wanted this sugary on the outside.
It looks like at the end here, how they shake it out, these little moon shapes there. We'll stop that share. It looks like those were kind of covered in like a little granular material, kind of the sugary ness of it. Is it easier? Would you prefer gummies or would you prefer chocolates if you had to work with one or the other?
It's crazy. Like I will eat chocolate all day over gummies, but I would rather make gummies than chocolate. Chocolate can be the easiest thing in the world to make. The only thing is that it doesn't matter, like, if you do all the steps correctly, because what if you made God mad and then chocolate just comes out bad? Like, there's
one way to look at it.
You could just be wearing the wrong pair of socks that day and it will bloom on you. And I try to explain that to all the new cooks because it's the most frustrating thing for them. Like we'll have to remelt and redeposit chocolate sometimes twice or 3 times. Really, though, I mean, besides all that, like it's just about controlling your environment and humidity. If you get a droplet of water into your batch of chocolate, it is destroyed. And for all the pain and suffering that you go through for chocolate, it will only be like 10% of your gummy sales. So it's just not worth it. Honestly, nobody should make it.
That's what it sounds like.
But if anybody wants to make it, I will make the most delicious chocolate.
Cleveland Innovative Infusions will. CleInfusions.com. They will make that for sure. They'll get you a great recipe for cheap.
Fun. Oh yeah. No, but I mean, it's cool because it does give you a different high. Like chocolate will give you a much slower, steady uptake than gummies will.
What's exciting you then? What do you think is, that's kind of on your horizon besides just helping these companies facilitate some of this? What is exciting you about the edibles industry then? Just a different, is it different shapes that we're finally using? Is it the Tyson's edible ear that you're like, this is where the future's going?
Oh, yes. That thing's awesome. Yeah, I love it. I love that. Mike Tyson getting into the cannabis industry is like my favorite thing.
I have to agree. It's my favorite thing of marketing so far, truly.
It's a 180 from his whole past persona that it's just the most, like, there's all this push. There have been a few articles about Jim Belushi doing that. Like, I'm not shocked that Jim Belushi is into farming marijuana. Like, that's not shocked. Mike Tyson becoming this first with The Hangover, this lovable kind of goof, into now being like a cannabis salesperson. And we were just talking, we recently did his little commercial where he punches a watermelon out and pulls out a thing of ears, like all in on the fact that he bit some dude's ear in a boxing ring. Is like, I'm gonna make this into weed product. Do you like that?
He can make fun of himself in that way and like have fun with it. Like he's, I don't know. I love him for his love of pigeons, though. That's for real. I am absolutely obsessed about birds, and so it's just like recognize like. I don't know. I get it.
I did not know he had a love of pigeons at all.
Oh yeah, he raises racing pigeons.
There's a whole documentary on him and his pigeon affection.
They're so cute and they're so smart, and they just deserve more clout.
I don't know if I'm feeling that. Kari Jager, Cleveland Innovative Infusions, Infusion, CLEinfusions.com. Yeah, so kind of what Dustin was getting to as we start to wrap up. What is, maybe not what are you excited, but what do you think the future brings? Like there's a lot of things lately I've been hearing about, things like nano emulsion. We've talked on this show about, and this isn't quite along the line of infusions, but it's along the lines of processing things like on a molecular level or doing breath sprays or even into emulsion, like we're straight into your lung, not emulsion, but that's the word I'm looking for. Like albuterol, like sprayers that go straight into your lungs, right? Those type of things. And so what does the future bring? Is it going to be, I don't think different shapes. I feel like we already got Lucky Charms. We got lots of shapes out there. Is it more the fine dining aspect? Is it going to be about price and cost? Is it going to be about flavors or niche markets, like more paleo organic? Like, what do you think is your kind of in it now and building your company into kind of, you got to predict, like pick some specialties. What do you think is going to be one of these trends in the next 5 to 10 years as cannabis legalizes? 2 more states, shout out to you at Maryland and Missouri, 2 more states legalizing recently, 21 adult use states, now almost 40 medicinal. What do you think the future is in infused goods? Is it cheaper? Is it quality? What do you think is coming down the road?
I think for a lot of the states, I think ultimately, nationally, I think prices just need to even out. And I think that's going to hurt a lot of states and it's going to help others. But I think overall, that's going to be the best thing. Like, because right now, everybody's flocking to the nearby state that's so much cheaper than the state that they're in.
Yes.
I think pricing needs to even out. I think that there should be, I am really excited about the fact that like some of the companies will pick a charity and say like $1 from each of these edibles sold goes to a charity. I think that using it as a platform to do good beyond just in the cannabis space and beyond just like giving somebody relief, I think is very cool. Mm-hmm. And then also I'm excited about some of the sustainable packaging that I've seen. Wild probably has the best packaging out of any company out there, period, point blank. But I think that there needs to be more responsibility for the sustainable aspect and for the MSOs that are in the best financial position to be able to be responsible to make that decision and to make those calls, I think that would be, you know, the coolest thing that could happen to edibles. But yeah, I would love to kind of work with companies to kind of just try to find more ethically made edibles.
I think that future is actually pretty bright. And I think we've seen glimpses of it in different companies that we can kind of, we can believe it's on its way. We can believe it's happening. I think that those are awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get there. I mean, I think as Dustin said, I think we're going to get there. And I think it's because, Kari, I think it's because more people like you are looking and starting companies like Cleveland Innovative Infusions, CleInfusions.com. I think it's because more people like you are thinking about that, right? I think, you're not the first and you're not the last, but I think you're someone who's got a good attitude and ready to kind of attack it. So I think people are thinking more about it and they're putting their skill sets out there and they're thinking about this and not just, we got to get these people high, right? You're thinking about the body and the intake and the measurements and the dosage and the pH balance and all of these tremendous details. You're thinking about obviously the cost. I love that you mentioned the packaging, right? Because that's the sneaky hidden cost that people are going to. We just had a conversation recently about someone that's switching from plastic to bag or from plastic jars to bags, pros and cons, right? But it's a lot cheaper. So there's all these things that we think about the infused business besides, you know, the aforementioned at the beginning of the show, those plate of brownies. Right? We've come a long way. We've come a long way from brownies and such being served. Though I still do love a good infused brownie. I still love kind of the random potluck jackpot vibe of what your bro's pot brownie is going to be like, right? Because like you said, you never quite tell. There is something amazing. Be real, you know, there is something wonderful and good for patients and people using cannabis on a therapeutic level to know their exact dosage. There's something soup's fun about not knowing exactly where that journey. It's like starting a car. It's like we drove to places in the old days without phones and GPS, people. We just went and we hoped we made it. There's something fun about eating that brownie and just hoping and wondering. And 3 hours later, sleeping. Right? There's just something fun about it.
Oh, dude, have you I like to take one that I don't know how strong it is and then like go do an errand. It's like,
wow, you are just like living on the edge.
What's gonna? Yeah, exactly. Like, will I make it back?
That is I love I love that attitude. I love Kari Jager from Cleveland Innovative Infusions, Infusion, CLEinfusions.com. There'll be a link to it in the comments. You can hit that right after you hit subscribe to the show. Kari, thank you for joining us. That is like the best way to end.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take your infusions and have a journey. Who knows where it's going to take you? Sometimes it'll just sit at home. Sometimes you might not make it home, but we hope you make it home. We hope you make it every Friday at 4:20 p.m. to catch out the latest show. Don't forget, you listen to us on audio. Anywhere you listen to audio podcasts, this show here, for example, 2 weeks later on audio. So every single show on audio on YouTube as well, every Friday, 4:20, Wayward.media at Meet WM. We'll get all of Kari's information in the comments. Check it out. If you're a MSO or a small operator looking to have some exciting new recipes, CleInfusions.com, Cleveland Innovative Infusions. They could hook you up. Kari, thank you for joining us here on Because Cannabis. I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.